I have been meditating lately on the circles in which we live. Like our carefully selected COVID bubbles or pods, consisting of close family or roommates we trust to maintain the integrity and wellness of said circle. We know or we believe that we can stay safe with this circle. And then through the magic of technology, we're able to widen our circles safely to be together and separated at the same time. And for this, we give thanks. Amen. We may be able to think of some wider circles that involve both more freedom and more risk. We may have work or vocational circles, school or learning circles, social circles, recovery circles. And these may have provided life-saving structure or support for us, even when the physical chairs were replaced by rectangular boxes and repeated reminders that you're on mute. These circles still somehow manage to remain unbroken, fortified even. There are those among us who might never have made it to that particular meeting in person otherwise. There are those for whom this ability to circle together virtually has been a lifeline. A lifeline. A reminder of life outside of our insular experiences. A reminder of hope. A reminder of resilience. We need unbroken circles in our lives. And so I invite you to begin to picture your different circles. Perhaps you may have a pen or some paper to doodle on while I'm speaking. And you might decide to draw intersecting circles, maybe a Venn diagram where parts of the circles overlap with each other, showing a relationship between the two, a logical overlap of common ground or commonality. And you might see that there are many places of overlap in your circles, and this also might begin to lead you to believe that these are the places where your own circle is widened. But that's not really expansion, really. It's overlap. It's just where you already touch. But to actually actively expand the places where we can overlap, that is widening the circle. Audre Lorde writes that the sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them, and lessens the threat of their difference. Joy helps us embrace our overlap and encourages us to widen our circles. Rather than being filled with the energy of resistance and fear, think about it. If we're coming from a place of anxiety and fear, we constrict our movement and flow. When we operate from joy, we find ourselves less threatened by our differences and empowered by our shared foundation of inherent worth and dignity. I wonder if you've ever participated in a privilege walk. It's an exercise commonly used in anti-racism and anti-oppression workshops and trainings. And traditionally, participants gather behind a long horizontal line, in a row, if you will, and when the facilitator reads a statement that applies to you, such as, if your family owned the house where you grew up, or land of any description, you step forward. And if it doesn't apply to you, you take a step back. And more statements are read, and as the statements continue, the distance shifts. And afterward, participants get to hear and process together their personal stories of how race and class, gender and ability affected these opportunities for individuals in the room. And this traditional privilege walk exercise helps to reveal and illustrate that distance between those who have privilege and those who don't, creating a visible gap to show the work that must be done within the privilege group. But it also still keeps the focus on the privilege itself, relegating those who have less to remain in the back. It can work well with a group whose goal is to center attention on privilege and begin to unpack that and have some room for processing. But the downside is that those without privilege, as in life, can end up coming in second yet again. In our process of passing the 8th principle here at UUCF, Paula Cole-Jones shared with us that it might lead us to see ourselves not just as congregations or churches, but rather of communities of communities. We're called to constantly navigate strength and power, privilege within these relationships. And I believe that it calls us to operate in circles rather than rows. Adrienne Marie Brown writes on that privilege walk and boldly recommends that it be reformatted into a circle format. She says this would represent the interconnectedness that is true to all human formation. And she says it's more compelling if, after the questions are asked, it centers those who have faced the most structural adversity and innovated their survival, for that's whose needs we should follow and whose demands we should center. Once we unveil the privilege and power and oppression in the room, we can imagine turning the circle on its side, creating a bullseye, a direction, a center for targeting attention and resources, a way to follow the center, set the pace by the center, measure relevance, or how much an idea touches the needs of the center. She says, I often do this mentally and somatically, note and acknowledge and feel the distinctions in privilege, access, and struggle in any interaction. But if we believe that we're all equal to one another, why doesn't it always feel that way? Mindfulness helps me see where I've been trained that I am less than another or more. It helps me see where I should be in the center, claiming attention and resources and pointing direction, and where I should be closer to the edge, protecting and resourcing and following. Where do you place yourselves in these living circles? Do you feel like you're on the margins waiting to be invited in? Do you find yourself looking out and around, realizing that you have been centered and it might be time to step back a bit? If this is a living tradition and we live in circles, what is this lesson that we need from the great turning that's happening? What will lead our hearts to expand wider and wider? I'm inspired by Brown's prophetic vision. She says, in this moment, with all the layers of impact and vectors of change, I can see that I am not the center of this moment, and that is a blessing. The center is younger. The center is trans. The center is willing and able to risk it all. In some places, the center is white self-responsibility. In some places, it's Black integrity. In some places, it's brown and borderless and global and post-binary. The center is in the streets, using full voice, unashamed, celebratory, ready for this confrontation. The center is pure, a fountain of hope and rage and possibility that feeds our greatest callings. Let us dream what that center looks like and how it shapeshifts with the demands and the needs of the collective. If you were in this sanctuary today with me, I would ask that you rise if you're willing and able. And I'd love for us to create a circle around the sanctuary. I'd love to listen for the shuffling and the whispers, to watch for the kind gestures and the gentle shoulder touches, to wait patiently for the subtle movement of welcome to form and reform the circle until everyone has a place. I would ask us to breathe together until we can breathe as a circle. And then I'd like for you to look around the room, noticing who has been in your circle for a while, maybe ages and ages, and who's new. Whose circle are you new to? May we continue to breathe into these shape-shifting circles, and may the circles we create together be expansive, resilient, healing, restorative, honest, and loving. Blessed be. May it be so, and amen.